Hey, do you guys remember the 80s?
I didn't go to screw all day and drink all night college like you twin bastards did. I'm sorry. Tonight I'm catching up.
Relax. We're just gonna borrow it. What if someone sees us? Man, stop thinking. Okay, tonight we're just doing. Shut off the alarm. They changed the alarm codes, man. Those bastards didn't trust me.
I wonder why.
Oh my God, holy fuck, this is great!
Oh, we're doing this. I know you want to.
I'll watch, thank you.
Tori, tonight we're not thinking. We're doing.
Don't fuck this up, man. Give yourself one night of enjoyment. Put a little relish on your hot dog.
Who wants a shot at the title? I'll do it!
Today on the Blockbusters show, we will be talking about the throwback teen comedy from 2011, Take Me Home Tonight, named after the one-hit wonder of the same name. 4 years after graduation, an awkward high school genius uses his sister's boyfriend's Labor Day party as the perfect opportunity to make his move on his high school crush. 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb. That's higher than I was expecting. The best way I can describe the plot to this movie is if you took one of those John Hughes teen comedies from the 80s, something like Breakfast Club or 16 Candles or something like that, and you mixed it with the plot to Can't Hardly Wait, which, yeah, it's kind of a cliched teen movie, but it was actually pretty charming. It took a lot of the kind of cliche elements you expect from the typical loser kid has a crush on a girl who's out of his league, and then, you know, they end up getting together at the end. It actually did it in a funny, charming way. This movie, on the other hand, tries to make it an R-rated comedy, and before we actually talk about the movie itself, I do want to point out that this film was actually written by some of the writers from that 70s show, and considering that a large majority of this movie is just nonstop, hey, remember the 80s? Somebody the other day told me that there was apparently a shortly lived That 80s show from the same writers, so I would love to believe that someone who made that show, as shortly lived as it was, sat back and was like, no, there's so much to joke about with the 80s, we can make an entire movie out of it. Because another thing about this movie is they began filming it in 2007, it sat on a shelf for a bunch of years, and then they finally released it in 2011. So, yeah, it was one of those kind of movies where they didn't really know what to do with it, and they just kind of awkwardly sat on it for a while, and then they finally released it way after the fact. You can tell this because some of the actors in the movie are significantly younger than how they looked at the time of this movie being released. As for the plot, we have an MIT graduate, Matt, played by Topher Grace, another That 70s Show regular. He is working at a Suncoast Video, which is basically a Blockbuster video type store, except it was usually in shopping malls. And he's going nowhere fast. He's stunted in an Arrested Development. He doesn't know what he wants to do with his life despite going to a prestigious school like MIT. And one day, when he's at work, he just happens to see the girl of his dreams, some hot blonde, played by an actress named Teresa Palmer, who, if you're familiar with some of the movies we've talked about on Blockbusters show, you might remember her as the Paris Hilton parody character from Adam Sandler's Bedtime Stories. Yeah, she was in that.
And you, young man, I want to hear all about this little Trisha Sparks next time I see you.
She was obviously that popular girl that he just was infatuated with. He wanted to be with her so badly. And one day she walks into the store. Just before she comes in, he throws off his uniform, just gets into some regular clothes, and he makes up a lie that he's now a successful banker at Goldman Sachs. And she says, oh, well, this big Labor Day party, it's all the people from our school are going to be there, so why don't you come along and we can get to know each other better? And of course, you just know that the lie is going to get revealed later, but there's no time for that. We got to set up some of the other characters. Like the wacky best friend Barry, who ends up getting fired from a car dealership, played by Dan Fogler, or as I like to call him, the poor man's Jack Black. I was going to make a joke about how Jack Black was starting to go downhill fast, but, I mean, The year before this movie was released, he was in Gulliver's Travels, but the year this movie came out, he was in Kung Fu Panda 2. So I think even Jack Black was making better career decisions than Dan Fogler. Keep in mind, Dan Fogler, despite having like 1 or 2 movies you may kind of like, in 2011 he was not only in Take Me Home Tonight, but he was also in Mars Needs Moms. So yeah, Dan Fogler, speaking of going nowhere fast, that's sort of the state of his career at the time. Matt, Topher Grace's character, also has a twin sister played by Anna Faris, despite the fact that there's a total age difference between the two. But she's really smart, and she wants to go to Cambridge. This becomes a whole plot point that becomes way more important later. The point is, they find out about the party, and they want to go too. So they end up stealing a car from the dealership that Barry was fired from, all the while Straight Outta Compton by NWA plays.
Holy woo! Unbelievable.
The one thing I will give this movie, one of the few things I actually did like, was the soundtrack, because it's loaded with all these 80s classics. And as a huge fan of 80s pop music and just 80s music in general, I will say that was one of the saving graces of the movie. Oh, interestingly enough, the movie takes place in California, and it's super late at night, and they establish that there are so many different people out partying in this area, and yet there is not a single soul on the street who notices these 3 kids, speeding off in a stolen car from a dealership. They do trigger a security alarm later, and they do end up getting cornered by some cops after the car is damaged, but like as soon as the car is stolen, there is not a single soul on the street that sees this happening. Once they get to the party, everybody verges off and they all go into their own little subplots. Wendy, Anna Faris's character, her subplot is that she hooks back up with this guy that she went out with in high school, who, uncomfortably enough, is played by her now ex-husband, Chris Pratt, who looks really thin. He doesn't look buff like he does in some of the newer movies that he's doing, and he also doesn't look as chubby as he did when he was on Parks and Rec. So he just he looks like a teenager in this movie, like a lot of other people do. Like Topher Grace looks noticeably younger than he did in 2011 when the movie was released. But whatever. And the whole thing with that, this ties back into the Cambridge thing. She ends up getting a letter that she wasn't accepted to Cambridge, which breaks her heart. But Kyle, Chris Pratt's character, he doesn't really care about that, because he was the handsome jock, and whenever she's around him, she has to dumb herself down so that way she can be with him and his group of friends. And ultimately, she ends up realizing that she shouldn't have to dumb herself down just to be with this guy who doesn't appreciate what she wants to do.
I applied to grad school.
Wow, grad school. Wow. Where?
Cambridge?
Is that in the Valley?
England?
You want to go to England?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just thought we could talk about it. I don't even...
What about the condo?
Well, we could always rent it out if we had to.
I don't know. I've got 6 franchises opening in Encino alone next year. Honey, my dad is going to be fucking pissed.
Because she says that she wants to go to Cambridge, become a writer. She wants to become famous at some point, doing what she loves, which is writing. And honestly, there is not that much of this subplot. It comes and goes, like, not consistently at all. There are tons of scenes where these characters are just not in the movie. And weirdly enough, I actually found myself liking this subplot a decent amount. I'm like, this is kind of like a John Hughes type thing right here. This feels like the plot to a John Hughes type movie, but they don't do enough with it. Like, it just comes and goes whenever it feels like the movie needs filler. As for Barry, Dan Fogler's character, he's basically supposed to be the token funny character of the movie. He's kind of like John Belushi in Animal House, except nowhere nearly as funny. He gets into fights with people. He ends up doing a shitload of cocaine, which, let me tell you, this movie has an excess of jokes about that. Like, every chance they get, they have jokes of people doing coke, to the point where it's like, okay, everybody in this movie might as well have just been walking around with powdered blow on their faces. It's a part where they end up going to other people's houses and other parties, and he ends up in this weird threesome situation with this married couple who are swingers. It's more awkward than funny. And
What the hell does Francis want?
He wants to watch.
I don't know.
They won't bother us. Just let him watch.
Okay, who is this Francis person?
It's not negotiable.
Maybe it's just because, man, I'm just not a Dan Fogler fan. Like I said, there's 2 movies that I think he's okay in, but I never really thought like, oh man, that guy, he's just the standout character of the movie. Every time that guy's on screen, he's just hilarious. He's a riot. It's nothing like that in this movie. Like I said, he's like the poor man's Jack Black. He's the funny fat guy who occasionally falls down and screams a lot. But Jack Black, even at his worst, I think has more charisma than this guy. Only other thing about the Dan Fogler subplot is that he ends up getting with this hot goth chick who is obviously there just to be sarcastic and snark on all the preppy douchebags that she hates. Which, I mean, was that a thing in the 80s? Seems more like a 90s, 2000s thing, but okay, yeah, sure, I can let that slide. And she's played by Michelle Trachtenberg. And for some reason, she's just attracted to him because he's not one of the preppy douchebags as much as he tries to be.
Just wanted to say I really love what you did out there tonight.
Who's making fun of me?
Don't worry about it. Your dance was cool. It was like anti-dancing. It's like a big screw you to all them conformist assholes.
Those 2 together, I can't see that. Especially just down to like their personalities. Like she's supposed to be the goth chick who's like, yeah, pain and misery and all these preppy douchebags and conformists. And it's like, it's one thing to have it that Dan Fogler ends up with Michelle Trachtenberg. That's enough of a stretch. But to have like their personalities where like he's on coke and like fucking around and bumping into walls and, you know, smashing a guy's guitar and stuff like that, and she finds that attractive. That's as much as a stretch as Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin's characters having girlfriends in Biodome. It's that level of like, yeah, sorry, I'm not buying it. As for the main plot with Topher Grace and Teresa Palmer, you know, it's the typical thing of like, you know, she likes him because she thinks that he's a banker at Goldman Sachs, and he likes her just because she's pretty. Like, that's really it. There's one scene that's kind of sweet where he mentions that she was nice to him when they were in high school. But then I'm just thinking, like, okay, so even if he didn't tell her the truth, which obviously he ends up doing, it's like most of this relationship just seems shallow. Like, she likes him because of his status, and he likes her because she's pretty. And she was nice to him once in school.
You lied to me?
No, I mean, I know it was stupid. But I only did it because I thought if you knew that my life was such a dead end...
I wouldn't sleep with you.
No.
Oh my God. I am so stupid. I actually thought that maybe you wanted to get to know me.
I do.
You know what? Congratulations, Matt. You slept with your high school crush. Mission accomplished.
No, Tori? Tori.
Part of me just couldn't help but think, like, you know, he probably could have spun that back around and said, like, you only liked me for my status. You only, you know, were nice to me because you thought I had a high-paying job as a banker. It's like, if the movie honestly went in the direction where they just both admitted that they were shallow and it's like, you know what, let's just start over, then the movie would have meant a little bit more. And it was at that point I was like, you know what, there is a smart movie buried underneath all the stupid jokes about cocaine and nonstop references to 80s things that are just kind of there. But no, the movie goes exactly the route you'd expect. Instead of them both admitting fault, which is something that Can't Hardly Wait did. Like, eventually you had the characters came together and was like, you know what, let's start over. Let's try to make this work. You know, we do have a chemistry. Let's actually try to make this relationship work. In this movie, he tries to prove himself because his dad, who is a cop, ends up coming across the car that they stole, which is now damaged. Again, this is like the only time they actually have the cops show up to acknowledge that there was a stolen car. And his dad is disappointed in him for not taking risks. Like, and they try to parallel that back to like, oh, you went to MIT and you're working at a video store. It's like, you don't take risks with your life, son. And I'm like, really? Is stealing a car, like, and getting into parties that involve swingers and cocaine, is that not enough of a risk for you? And you're a cop. Like, what the hell? Like, I know they did that for character reasons, but still, that, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever.
I don't know what I want to do, and I'm sorry I'm such a fucking failure!
You haven't really failed, son. Because you haven't really tried to succeed. So don't credit yourself as a failure. You're worse than that.
At the end of the movie, they establish that the risk that he wants to take to try and prove himself is there's this like challenge that people are doing at the party where you have to get inside of a big bubble sphere thing and roll down a hill or something, and he ends up crashing into a swimming pool and he's about to drown, but he ends up making it out. And his sister and Teresa Palmer, they're just so happy that he's alive, and that's when they rekindle the relationship, and she now likes him because he did that just to prove that he could. I mean, if John Hughes made this movie, he actually probably would have had enough clever writing in there to try and justify why these characters are doing some stuff like this. And they wouldn't have just tried to make it some big comedic set piece like, oh, he's getting bounced around in a giant metal ball and he almost drowns, but he didn't. He proved himself. He ends up getting the girl. Dan Fogler ends up with Michelle Trachtenberg, and he says that he's going to go back to school, I guess. Because that was another thing. In the dialogue, they kept mentioning that like he was a dropout. And so now she's convinced him to go back to school, and they're together, I guess. And Anna Faris ends up dumping Chris Pratt because he's a preppy douchebag and because he's not a very good Mario or Garfield.
You just scared my heart.
I gotta point this out. Along with the 80s soundtrack, the movie takes place in the 80s, and its love for the 1980s is very surface level. I like this movie was made by those hipsters that are like, oh yeah man, I love the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. I'm an 80s kid, man. The 80s had so much better music and fashion and movies and stuff. I love the 80s. I'm such an 80s kid. And they only know about things from the 80s from watching retro television that loved the 80s. That's what this movie feels like. Because
I work at Suncoast Video.
Wow. Congratulations. Mom and Dad must be psyched. I'm gonna get out of here. Check this out, moonwalk. Could you guys move? I'm trying to fucking party here.
And the weird thing is, halfway through the movie, it feels like it doesn't even matter anymore. Like, halfway through, they stop doing that. Halfway through the movie, it just, like, they just stop referencing stuff from the 80s, and I'm like, you know what? Honestly, this movie could have just taken place in modern times, and it wouldn't have mattered. Like, it's so inconsequential to the plot. It doesn't matter. Even down to the fashion. Everybody, like, you could probably see it on the poster, but everyone in this movie dresses like a Halloween costume of people from the 80s. Like, here's an example of how to do this thing right. The first Hot Tub Time Machine came out in 2010, a year before this movie did, and that's about 4 guys getting sucked back in time into the 80s. And while there are people wearing stereotypical 80s outfits like, the neon colored spandex or, the bright suit jackets and all that kind of thing, it actually worked because there were people in that movie that just dressed like regular people. Like, not everyone in the 80s looked like that, and not everyone in the 80s was walking around with fucking Coke on their face.
Must be some kind of hot tub time machine.
This movie feels like it's made by someone who claims to love the 80s but never actually lived through them, versus Hot Tub Time Machine, which, yeah, it was kind of cartoonish and silly, but it was fun. It ran with it, and yeah, it was poking fun at that decade, but it also had some nostalgia for it. It felt like it was kind of a loving tribute while also poking fun at it. This movie, like, the whole reason that it's set in the 80s is just for aesthetic reasons, and it feels like it's completely unnecessary halfway through the movie. Other than the soundtrack. Far from the worst movie I've ever seen. It did kind of get better as it went along. Like I said, if the movie went in the direction that I thought it was going to, I probably would have liked it a little bit more. Like, if you actually had the characters be smart and acknowledge that they were both being shallow, then it probably would have meant something. But no, you have to take more risks. You have to prove yourself. You have to do something stupid and, risk your life, like go downhill in a metal ball and almost drown in a swimming pool, to prove that, you're a risk taker. Dan Fogler is not that funny. Like, all throughout I was just thinking, why couldn't they get Jack Black? And then I was like, oh wait, he's doing better things. And honestly, out of all the characters, Anna Faris's character and her subplot was the most interesting in the movie, and they don't utilize that at all. There's long stretches of this movie where she's just gone, like, and they don't address her subplot until like way later. But like I said, it's far from the worst comedy I've ever sat through. The biggest problem with it is that it's just kind of boring. Like, it just doesn't really go anywhere. And the few, like, zany jokes that there are just kind of feel like, My recommendation would be watch Hot Tub Time Machine, the first one, because the second one's not very good. But the first Hot Tub Time Machine, I actually really liked, and I thought that had really wacky, zany humor in it. And while it did poke fun at the 80s, it actually did have fun with its premise, and it did feel like a loving homage to, you know, movies of the 80s with some of the casting and a lot of the humor in it. Versus this, it's, like I said, it feels like it was made by one of those people who claims to love the 80s, but their only knowledge of it is people sharing things on social media. And it's like, remember this from the 80s? Oh, I remember that. So yeah, Take Me Home Tonight. Soundtrack is great. Movie itself, I would skip it. Tune in next time to the Blockbuster Show, where we will be looking at a documentary, and we're also going to be looking at a Netflix series that came out a while ago, both themed around Blockbuster Video. We're going to be looking at The Last Blockbuster and that Blockbuster sitcom that's on Netflix. But until then, guys, I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.
Evidence. Tell me.